Hey mates, welcome back to the channel. My name's Kaitlyn and I'm an American learning to live down under here in beautiful Sydney, Australia. So today I have put together a list of 12 amazing Aussie women that I think you all need to hear about. Some of them you've probably heard of before, but a lot of these women are huge influences in Australian history. So to see who made the cut, stay tuned. So the first women, or really two women who made this list, are Mina Wiley and Sarah Durack. These two Aussie women were actually the first two Australian female Olympians in the Summer Games back in 1912. The Olympics that year were held in Stockholm, Sweden, and both women were competitive swimmers. And Sarah Durack was actually the first female Australian gold medalist in the 100-meter freestyle in Stockholm in 1912. Now, I know a lot of us don't really like politicians these days, but the next woman on this list absolutely had to be on here, and that is Edith Cowan. Edith Cowan was the first female member of parliament over in Western Australia, and I'm sure a lot of Aussies have seen her before because she's actually on the $50 note. All the way back in 1894, she was actually the founder of the Karrakatta Club, which was the first all-women's social club in Australia. She was a huge figure in the women's suffrage movement back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And she was a key figure to getting women the right to vote in Western Australia in 1899. Jumping a little bit more into the modern era, Dr. Evelyn Scott has been an advocate for the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders here in Australia. Her advocacy on behalf of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people actually started the Townsville Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander advancement legacy back in the 1960s. She was the first Aboriginal woman to be granted the honor of a state funeral by the Queensland government, honoring over 50 years campaigning on behalf of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. The fourth woman on this list had to be mentioned, and that is Maud Laurie Bonney. She was actually the first Australian woman to fly solo from Britain all the way to Australia back in 1933. And in 2012, she was actually inducted into the Australian Aviation Hall of Fame. Another Aboriginal woman who had to make this list was Faith Thomas. She was the first Aboriginal woman to represent Australia in an international sport. She was the first Aboriginal woman to play international cricket for Australia back in the 1950s. And all the way up until 2019, she was the only Aboriginal woman to play Test cricket for Australia. This next woman was truly inspiring to me, not just because we happen to share the same birthday, but she was actually the first female war correspondent in World War I, and that is Louise Mack. She was a war correspondent in Belgium and has actually written multiple novels about her stories during World War I, what it was like living there, and her escape from Nazi-occupied Germany. She was actually almost caught by the Germans as a spy, but she escaped with a false passport and pretended to be a mute hotel maid all the way up to Holland until she made her way safely to England. She was a writer, a poet, a war correspondent, an author, and overall a very inspiring force for Australian female writers. The next woman on this list is Sister Elizabeth Kenny, and she came up with a radical way of treating polio in a time before the polio vaccine existed. She challenged male doctors in her medical field and came up with a treatment that was used for decades to treat polio. The principles that she taught in her treatment were actually the foundation for using physio and physical therapy for polio treatments for decades. The next woman on this list is Nobel laureate Dr. Elizabeth Blackburn, who in 1984 discovered telomerase, which is an enzyme that replenishes the telomere, but Dr. Blackburn is actually the first female Australian Nobel laureate. The next person on this list is also another writer, and that is Miles Franklin. She was a writer and a feminist whose most well-known work is My Brilliant Career, published in 1901. Miles Franklin was dedicated to coming up with an Australian form of literature. And throughout her life, she supported writers, literary agencies, literary organizations, and to this day, her work still has a huge impact on Australian literature. And in 2013, they created the Stella Prize, which is awarded annually for the best written work by an Australian woman. Now, this young woman is very inspiring, and that is Marita Cheng. She founded RoboGals, which is an organization to help and promote young women in the engineering field who are interested in pursuing engineering careers. She was actually nominated as the 2012 Young Australian of the Year, and she's the founder and CEO of her own tech company, Allbot, which is a startup robotics company here in Australia. And in 2018, she was actually named in Forbes magazine as one of the top 50 women in technology. And another truly inspiring Aussie woman is Alyssa Azar, who is the first Australian woman to climb Mount Everest twice. In May of 18, at just 21 years old, she actually broke the Guinness Book of World Records. She actually set a new world record as the youngest woman to climb Mount Everest twice. And last but not least on this list, I think this is a woman who we've heard so much about the last couple of years in the news, and that is Ash Barty. In 2021, Ash Barty won 5 titles, including a 2021 title in the Wimbledon Championship. She was actually the 2020 Young Australian of the Year. And this year in 2022, she is actually the first Australian woman to win the Australian Open since 1978. So this list of women includes so many people, from aviatrixes to writers to athletes. There are so many incredible Australian women, and I know this barely scratches the surface. So I'm sure you guys have a couple on your list as well, maybe a couple of huge ones that I didn't mention. So drop their names down below. Let me know a little bit about their history. To the women in my audience, happy International Women's Day, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like and subscribe button down below to join our little Amer-Australian family. I post on Mondays and sometimes Thursdays about the differences between American and Australian culture and the overall process of learning to live down under. My name's Kaitlyn, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!